Everyday Inclusion Live of 2023. I am Mo Berkner-Boyd. I'm a white woman. I got red hair that's kind of curly today. It's doing its own damn thing. I am wearing new glasses, y'all, cat eye, sort of, some maroon stuff happening, my bookshelf behind me. I am the founder of the Moxie Exchange and Everyday Inclusion app, and we've been hitting go live on this series more than every other week this year. I'm joined by Bill Bradshaw with Witham, and he is guest number 32 for the year. We talk about everything under the sun as it relates to inclusion, belonging, culture, leadership. And I'm joined by guests like Bill to have conversations so we can all learn from each other. This work is not for the faint of heart. And when we can all connect and learn from each other and grow, that is what this series is about. So I'm fired up to be chatting with you, Bill.
Awesome. Me too.
And to learn from you. So introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mo. And I wish I could say, as the 32nd guest, I was 32 years old, but I've been around the block a bit. So for introduction purposes, I am a gay white man standing at a 6'4" length, but sitting today at a wonderful New Jersey office here at the Jersey Shore. It's quite gray out. I would love to say I used to have my luscious brown curls. It's more of a gray Brillo pad-esque type of coif these days. It does not do well with the weather. And I'm super excited to be here, joined with Mo, having conversations around all things inclusion, all things diversity, accessibility, belonging, culture, whatever those buzzwords are that have been around for quite some time, and navigating what that conversation looks like. So I am thrilled that I get to do this work every day. One of the things that I love to do is talking to folks like Mo and kind of just sharing the space of inclusion. And my role here at Witham is the head of inclusion and diversity, which we have now kind of rebranded as employer of choice. So we've recently kind of moved ourselves out of just that inclusion and diversity umbrella, and we look at what is employer of choice. So we have culture, we have our community impact, or formerly known as CSR work, community corporate social responsibility, and then we still have our inclusion and diversity work. So I've been leading this charge for just a little bit over 3 years, but no stranger to the space. I've been in a couple roles prior, and I'd probably say started this work a little over 10 years ago.
So what led you to the work? I always think people's stories are really compelling in terms of how you end up in this chair.
So we just welcomed about 250 new hires last week, and I had the same conversation with them. The first question is always like, how'd you get here? And then the second question is, how can I get on your team? And I'm like, we just hired you to be CPAs. We need to be CPAs. Right. Let's learn that. Learn your skill, right? But I would say, so I always call myself a CPA in recovery. Because I started my career as a CPA and did many things, at audit, at tax, at advisory work, and had a really great opportunity to understand very early on in my career who was in our playing field and who wasn't. We always used to use the word, like, in my mind, I would say, I want to be, but I want to be, and I don't see me, right? So I kind of thought that just kept resonating in my head. And I had multiple opportunities to do some advisory work from a human capital side, and I kind of got that itch for, human capital and working with our, HR teams and working with our clients' HR teams. So did a couple different things, left professional services, took that CPA hat off, took that consulting hat off, went to work for a utility, which was super fun in New Jersey, small state, 7 investor-owned utilities. Some things you'll never forget is, learning how did the interworkings of a utility through a major change in climate. Hurricane Sandy happened while I was there, but I was doing community development work there. And that was right around the time where our CEO kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, Bill, like, let's look at D&I, like, what is that? So I think I was probably one of the first or second people to even go through that Cornell program that now a degree certification. It was basically a experiential learning when I went. I don't even know if we got papers, but it's super fun now to see people getting degrees, and they're so proud of it. But I think it's awesome. So that's kind of that's kind of how I started. You know, I said I should be able to see more people like me. And when I say like me, I mean openly gay men working in this place, individuals who identify with as a person with a disability saying that, but we might not look like we identify as a person with a disability, and really someone who's making spaces for everyone to sit at the table.
Mhm.
And I thought it was really interesting to go through that space. And I love to see that there is more folks like me now, but our work is not done. Definitely
No.
not.
Well, and I think there's something interesting with what you said, welcoming the new people last week, right? 250 new hires saying, how can I be on your team? It's like, well, you already are.
Right.
Right? Because this has to be owned by everybody. And you talked a little bit about that just in terms of how you all are thinking about this work differently. And I would love to kind of dig into that more because I think there are a lot of organizations that are at that point where they're really thinking about and looking at DEI isn't just this thing that sits over here. So say more about that, about being an employer of choice, and what were some of the conversations, right? How did you get there? And then we could talk about the pillars, but I'm just even just that evolution of thinking, I think is interesting.
So I always tell folks on this, like it's like strap in double seatbelts because it's going to be grokky, right? So what happens is we consistently look at what our workforce looks like. What's the data demographic of our workforce? But at the end of the day, as practitioners, we don't control a lot of that, right? We can get out there and make relationships with organizations that might bring us people that are underrepresented in our organizations, but we don't control the hiring or the managing of those individuals. They may sit in completely across the country from us. They may sit in the Northeast in this country, in another country, but we are not the ones making the hiring decisions, right? So what happened when I came into the firm and all my other roles, most of them being in professional services, we are a people business. We sell our people. That's what we do. We're audit tax advisory. We sell our people. It's what we do. So, it's very different than some organizations. But what I uncovered very quickly was, we have those three areas of focus. We have our workforce, we have our workplace, we have our marketplace. That's very D&I basic. But what we didn't realize is the integration of the individuals that come into the organization. How do we make them feel like this is the best place to work? Let's listen to those folks. Maybe that's where the ERGs come into place and we start hearing some of the best policies coming out of those. We look for inclusive benefits. We look for what makes us a best place to work, right? And then we think about how can we foster that commitment into our culture? What are we doing? What does our culture look like? What does it look like and feel like to work here? And it's not about, it's that people think culture is something that sits outside over here. It is audit quality. It is showing up with integrity. It is submitting your timesheet on time. It is making sure that your expense report is diligent. It's all about doing the right thing all the time when no one's watching. And how do we create that? And how do we create that vibe where people want to come into the office? They want to sit and they want to rub elbows and have conversations around a water cooler, just to talk about life, to talk about whatever, instead of sitting in their homes and not wanting to do those things. And then the third piece to me was, how can we intersect both the culture of what we do, all of the people that we're bringing into the organization, but then also giving back to our communities and bringing those folks to say, not only are we, a best place to work, but we're also a best place for the communities where we live and we work. So when I looked at, the areas that made sense from our strategy, which again, workforce, our people, workplace, where you come to work, marketplace, what we do in our communities and how we look outside, I said, wait a minute, there's other intersects, there's other verticals within the firm that match those same bodies of work. So all of our CSR work, all of our corporate social responsibility work, how are we a good, environmental steward? What are we doing from an ESG? That's the new buzzword, ESG perspective. Where does that sit? That's part of the D&I. That's part of D&I, right? What are we doing from culture? Like we have here at the firm, we have something called the With and White. What is the With and White? Tell me what it is. How does it resonate with you? Does it mean the same thing as for someone who's been here for 30 years as someone who's been here for 30 minutes? And how do we make that relevant? So when I looked at it, I said, all of the things that make us great make us an employer of choice, right? So think of that as our umbrella. And as I mentioned, inclusion and diversity is one of those pillars because we want to make sure we have the best experience, that we're bringing in the best and the brightest, and we're really targeting underrepresented talent within our organization and our profession. We want to make sure that we are supporting our communities, giving back, and then that we want to make sure that culture is second to none, and that's what that differentiates from this work. Because I will tell you, Mo, you can go to a big four firm. I've been there. I've worked at two of them, great places, and I worked at a mid-sized firm. You're all going to do the same thing when you're first coming out of university. You're all going to do the same thing. It's what differentiates us in the market. So, as a professional service firm, as an organization where our enrollment is shrinking, people do not want to become CPAs. How can we create it? How can we make it sexier? How can we make people want to do this work? And then add the layer on, okay, what about our underrepresented talent? How do we do that? Like, let's really dive into that. What does that look like? So that's where we've kind of centered our focus, on the path forward.
So much to unpack. I feel like I've got enough bags to take a trip to New Zealand. A couple of things in there. What I loved hearing, because oftentimes we will hear employer of choice, and it's more about, and I'm not going to name names, but it's more like the pay to play, where you go and you get like, we're the best XYZ. That's not what I'm hearing, right? What I'm hearing is truly looking at every part of the organization, how you do work internally, externally, who you're attracting, what that feels like, who are you to the marketplace. So it is really embedding.
Yeah.
I want to check in on something, and just if you've got a little bit more detail. There were so many things in there, but I heard you, I think, say that you used your ERGs for really deep employee listening.
Yes.
About their experience. How did you go? First, am I getting that right? And then second, how did you go about doing that and having the trust that those folks could really tell you their real experience, right, and opportunities?
Yeah. So I can think of multiple opportunities, but I'm going to think of two that rise to the top. One that just recently happened, and one that's a continual story of that. So it's creating. So I don't even want to call them safe spaces, because if we have our allies in there, we create inclusive spaces, I would say, for folks to show up at those meetings. And really, what I do is, and some folks laugh all the time, because I align those ERGs just like a business unit. What's your business plan? You have a budget. What are you producing? What's your ROI? You own the relationships. You want an outside vendor to come in and do work with us. Does it align? I'll give you the budget. What's your ROI? If you didn't hit it, don't come to me again asking for it. Yep. So you have to really let them own that. I think in that ownership becomes trust, right? So they trust me and I trust them. And that's the first piece. The second piece is
hard stop just for a second. What Bill has done there, y'all, is also extraordinarily important leadership development, because those, right, they might be coming in and they might be in audit. I don't know, right? What you've given them by saying this is like a business unit, strategy, ROI, numbers, tracking, all of that translates to their next role.
Yeah.
And so there is employee resource groups are such an amazing opportunity when done, like Bill and Witham is doing them, to take your underrepresented talent, get them exposure to, because I'm guessing there was also exposure opportunity in there, to executive leaders, and get them the experience of, it's almost like P&L experience.
Yeah.
Right, of running. And so I think that in and of itself is like, I'm throwing confetti.
Yeah. And Ismail, thank you. I appreciate that. It's the intersectional understanding of the workings of our whole organization. So I'm fortunate. I sit on leadership team. I get to work with marketing. I get to work with IT. I get to work with HR. I get to work with our talent team and our learning team. That I'm fortunate. But these folks, to your point, if they're an audit, they're only an audit. Maybe they're a manager, so they don't interact so much with maybe a bunch of partners. But this gives them the opportunity to take a leadership role, to develop themselves, to get them to the next level, and adds to their resume internally. So the two that I think that stand out for me were our disability we call them here at the firm TMRGs, Team Member Resource Group. So you'll hear me say ERG because as a practitioner, it doesn't roll off my tongue, but we call our folks team members. So it's super fun because it's just the thing that they have here with them. I think is great. So we have a disabilities TMRG, and it's led by two of our individuals who are just fabulous. The one woman, Sandra Ruoff, who leads it, is like a true ally in every word. She is a mom that has two children with disabilities, not someone that identifies with disability, raised her hand and immediately said, like, I want to lead this, let's do it. They have been able to collectively look into the insular to their have conversations around what does it look like. The amount of opportunities that they have come back to us and changed policy, like HR policy, like, okay, HR, can you come back and just do a disability accommodation refresher for our folks who might need that? Where do you find the accommodation process? What is it? Where to go, how to do it, how to request it. What does that look like? Like things that folks, we think that maybe we touch on it in an onboarding process, or it was touched on, or it's been evolved, but how to do that, right? The amount of individuals that just said thank you because now they know where to find the information, super cool. Those same groups also said, let's take some of our budget here and start putting it away for scholarship to give future folks that want to come into the accounting profession that might identify as a person with disability that might need a little extra lift. Let's put some money away, and at the end of the year, give out scholarships to those who have identified that they want to be accounting majors, and they might need a little bit of an accommodation, and they can use this fund to help that, or they can use it for books or whatever. So that's like, to me, like I get chills when I talk about that because they thought totally outside the box, something we hadn't done before. It took a little hurdles because we had to work with a couple different universities, but that worked. The other one that I think, when I know you, like your light bulb went off when I said inclusive benefits. I watched you. It's what I do for a living. I look at people all day long.
Right.
So, inclusive benefits, I think about our Pride TMRG, and they have been probably the most vocal when it comes to inclusive benefits. So when I got to the firm a little bit over 3 years ago, we didn't have trans inclusive benefits. Not because we didn't want to, we just didn't. No one had brought it to the attention. No one knew. So they were 1000% the stewards of that. And not only were they the stewards of creating it, they were making sure that it was WPATH for trans inclusive benefits, that it was HRC. We could get that survey, we could take the survey, look at the survey. Are we on board? Are we not? That same group has also championed a gender inclusive dress code policy, which has just been updated and embedded. They have also changed pronouns on reviews. I just got an email from one of the leads yesterday and was like, Bill, were we going to change the review process because it still has, it still has he and she, and we should change that to gender neutral pronouns. They are consistently looking at all of our processes, and I might even miss them because I won't catch everything, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that'll bring it. They'll come to me and say, okay, how do we do this? And the next thing is I say, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. Let me make sure nothing else is going on over here, meaning it hasn't already been worked. And then I allow them to come into the room with our HR folks and say, okay, this is their topic. This is what they want to discuss. I don't take it from them. I allow them to present it out. And because they're the ones that have brought it to the attention, they're the ones that are passionate about it. And they're the ones that are going to be able to affect and make the decision to get that change done. So I can tell you, since I've been here, there's been multiple policies that have been added, from an HR perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a sheer mentorship, sponsorship, relationship overview perspective. But really, our TMRGs have driven not only what we typically see as, people processes, so recruitment or retention or advancement. They really have looked at what is the best experience of the person joining the firm and being able to join, grow, thrive, promote, and stay here. Like that's my 5 things that I talk about all the time. So
would you repeat those for me?
So I always say, join the firm, they can grow here at the firm, they get promoted, they can stay here at the firm, and they can, I forgot the 5th. I think I skipped one. They could join the firm, they could grow here, prosper here, promoted here, and stay here. Sorry, 5. So I forgot the prosper because I kind of switched it up. I switched up my path, but that's important. The prosper is sometimes you have to seed the garden. That's what I say all the time. People look at me like, I'm like, sometimes you got to sit and you got to go this way and you got to go this way. You can't just consistently look about going up the ladder, right? You got to seed your garden. It's not going to look pretty every year if you just keep growing up, right? It's, you're going to be a vine. So think about what that looks like. And our TMRGs have done a really good job at helping people understand that there is a process, there is a plan. You have to seed your garden.
So there, again, there was so much, y'all, in terms of best practices, because the trust in those TMRG leaders, right, to say, you know, your experience, you know what you lead. Yes. We're not going to, right, this is so far beyond food, flags, and fun.
Yes.
So many ERGs are, right? So everything from scholarshiping, which then, by the way, is about pipeline and about attracting all the way through looking at your systems and your policies and making changes there. And every single one of those things benefits everybody.
It affects your experience. It's employee experience at its finest. That is employee experience.
That's it. That's it.
When I chew on that, it's how are we an employer of choice? And it's also when I look at what's the idealistic person that's going to do well here? What do I want them to embody? What is their experience? They're actually feeding me what it is to be an employee of choice. I want more people like that, right? I want them to stay here. I want them to grow here. I want them to thrive here. I want them to prosper here. Like I want all those things to happen. And so it is, to me, it's a two-way street. It's not me being like, oh, we have all these great things, come work here. It's also learning from the people that are doing well here, that have taken advantage of all the great things that I have talked about, that we have here, that I haven't talked about, and me watching those folks prosper, thrive, promote, advance, all of those things.
Yeah, and I know I had us kind of take a deep dive on this one, Bill, right? Like totally unplanned. But there were so many lessons, right, that you could think about doing this in so many different parts of an organization, right? I pulled out because I heard the deep listening and I had no idea the treasure trove that was even beyond that. So thank you for sharing. I'm curious about what you hope for the future and what you think is in the future for this work. I think a part of the conversation that we've had already is many organizations are really coming to understand the centering back to, are we creating these environments where every single person can thrive?
Yeah.
And that's different than having a DEI department.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, crystal ball.
Yeah.
What do you think is next for y'all? Or what do you have planned, and what are some of the hopes?
So I think, I'm going to take my Witham hat off for a second, hide my logo, and say, from a practitioner standpoint, I envision larger tables, more seats, bigger rooms, right? And that's what I envision, but that's also what I know we need. There's no discussion on, can we have that, right? It's how do we get there? So as practitioners, that's our job, and that's why we show up to work every day, is how are we going to get there, right? It's not, we know we have to, right? In regards to the firm, I would say, we really have doubled down on our next generation of leaders and looking at what that looks like. So what I can tell you is our next gen leaders are the seeds that we need to grow, because they are unapologetic. They are ready to tell you what they need, when they need it on their time. And we are the ones that have to adapt. So we have to get the policies and procedures in place now to adapt that, because it's only going to continue. Like, we're only going to continue to do that. We need, from an accounting profession, we are shrinking. So we need to have more individuals and students go into that profession, whether they are seasoned students, second career, third career, or they are right out of collegiate young adults that are 22 years old, 23 years old. We need to get folks in there. In regards to what is the evolution of where we're going, we are integrating our I&D practices into all that we do. So are you a good people leader? And in being a good people leader, can you lead an office? And by leading an office, that means, are you empathetic, right? And what does empathy mean? So it's there. it is, part of our aspiring partner program. So if you're going to become a partner of the program of the firm, we have an aspiring partner program, which happens over a 2-year span. There's a whole series on being an inclusive leader, and what is an inclusive leader, and what does that look like? Taking that person out of their chair, having conversations, having uncomfortable conversations. They laugh at me quite often the time. I do an ouch and educate series with them all the time. Like, say this, don't say that. That was what we used to call it. Now it's ouch and educate. So, I'll stop people right in the middle of the conversation and say, hold on one second. Can you help me understand what you meant by? And then when you ask them to repeat that, and I don't care who they are, most times they're leaders that are above me, and I'll be like, help me understand what you meant by that. I know your intention was good, but say it again so you hear it, and then you learn from it. So
Yep.
our goal is to get all of our people ready, willing, and able to be people leaders of the firm. Because what happens is we intricately work with our heads down, right? We're heads down. We are an accounting firm. We're busy. We have a busy season. Then we have an extension of a busy season. Then we have extension of a busy season. So when are we not busy? I don't know, 3 weeks, right? So when do I have time to like really develop our folks? Maybe during those 3 weeks. So I have to really understand what that means. And in doing that, we, telling people to lift their heads up and kind of like look at each other and have conversations and talk to each other and learn. I'll say all the time, the best people leaders are the ones that just take the time to talk to people, to show up and be present, and not say like, what's going on with that audit, or what do you got with that tax return, or why is this client's calling asking about this? It's, hey, how was your weekend? What do you got going on for any vacations planned coming up? Like, acknowledging that the person might be of Jewish faith and acknowledging their time off. And did you enjoy Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Like, acknowledging those things. So I think as a firm, we have kind of blown the doors off of not having conversations, and we have those conversations, whether they are intentional, comfortable, not comfortable. We give them the resources. Our team is always going to be there to help. And I say this all the time. Our job, we don't own anything. We just enhance everyone else's process. So I'm here as like the chief enhancement officer, because I want to enhance everything that everyone else does and make sure that they look at it from a lens of inclusion. And, we're here to educate and bring awareness. We are not here to tell you that you have to believe what we're saying. We're here to bring education, make you aware, and just have everyone have a clear understanding of that breeds within itself inclusion. Just showing up with awareness, showing up with that, being educated about things, and be willing and being empathetic to learn. Never did I think that I would see on an agenda, for future leaders of the firm, empathetic leadership and inclusive leadership, and having them like have conversations with each other after we just had a really intense session to really take a deep dive and take them on kind of that emotional roller coaster a little bit, where this is how people experience the firm. It might not be your experience, but I'm going to tell you, this is how some people experience the firm. And you have people with tears, you have people like stoic white, like you have people try to get out of the room because they're embarrassed. I've had it all. But at the end of the day, the goal is that not everyone's experience is the same. Not everyone's going to show up with the same experience. Not everyone's had the same experience. So the only way for you to understand that is through communication, through educating yourself and being aware about what's in your surrounding.
Yeah. And doing that consistently.
Repetitively, consistently. And the last thing I'll say on this is, there's a big push around holding our leaders accountable. I believe in accountability. I believe in engagement, but I also believe in the fact that those things come in times when we're not always watching. So let our people tell us, and they replicate behaviors. So as you see your people who, move through their career progression and they're doing those things, someone showed them how to do that, right? They've seen somebody do that. And I'll say this last thing on it is, there's always a push to put it in performance evaluations, make sure it gets in there. We do have people metrics now in our performance evaluations. And I&D is one of those. So folks can choose to do that. How it's measured, we're still kind of working that out, because there's some folks say I can take one online course and that's what measures it. Doesn't really do much for me. So really like embedding that and looking at what that might look like, moving forward.
So good. And we're at time. I have more questions, but no time.
It's okay.
So, will you leave me with one last truth bomb?
I will. It's a good one. I thought about it all night long because I was like, I know I have to end with something. So what can I think about? So I've always said my team, any team I've worked on, any team that I've worked with, I've always said, turn your passion into action. So think about what that means. Whatever your passion is, turn it into action. And I challenge every single person every day to do that, because don't tell me you're passionate about something and sit on the sideline and do nothing. Use your voice, use your intel, use your empathy, use your political capital, lose whatever you have to do that. And I'll say, do it with the W's. So not only because my name is William, go by Bill, but I'll say, do it with the W's. Why are you doing it? What are you going to do about it? Where are you going to do it? And when are you going to do it? So take that passion. You don't have the rest of your life. Take the time now to do it. And the great Carolyn Wanga has said once and multiple times, and she resonates in my head all the time when I think about this, is, always be who you are. Contracts are negotiable, people are not. So be who you are, where you are. And if you can't be the who you are, where you are, change the where, not the who.
Yes. Yes.
That
That was like a double mic drop. Thank you.
I do love Carolyn. She's great.
Thank you for sharing. So much to learn, so many best practices. I really look forward to staying in conversation
for sure
in this ongoing evolution. That right, it's what makes the work, right? You said strap in, right, and it makes the work exciting and interesting and challenging. And I just appreciate so much the approach that y'all are taking, and your leadership and your willingness to share with this community of people who are everything. We have L&D and HR and new managers and people that really want to create a world where everyone can thrive, not just workplace. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Y'all, we will see you next week for our very last Everyday Inclusion live of 2023. In the meantime, get out there. And as Bill said, he talked about turning passion into action. We always say, do the next right thing. So cheers, y'all.